start the recording. The pleasure here. Thank you everybody who is attending. This is intended to give you the tools you need to run IronCAD easily. And so what I'm going to start with now is, this is the opening screen that you get. We'll be working in the product, but just for a quick moment, I want people to be able to see that the purpose of this is to make your design life easy. And this is the full IronCAD learning series that we're going to be doing. Today's lesson is going to be just on setting up a scene. Within a couple of weeks, we'll give you the schedule for the drag and drop design, designing the shapes and how that works. Lesson 3, streamlined sketching. We'll talk about how IronCAD sketching works differently. And then lesson 4, what is an IntelliShape and what is it? What the heck are we dragging and dropping? And finally, lesson 5, our most advanced modeling technique, and that's integrated history-based direct modeling. So today we're simply concentrating on setting up the scene and how to do that, and I'm going to jump directly into the product so you can see that by starting out. And by the way, just so that anyone knows, any of these lessons are all available, and I will give you full access to where they are. So any of the things that were done, this is sponsored by TechNet, and these are lessons that you can look at online, so they're available for people to use at any point you have a place to look at it. So let's go right into the product. As we start out, as you well know, when you start, there are a number of different choices, maybe a little bit confusing, but for those who haven't used IronCAD before, these are your main choices right here. These are the 3 different things. Number 1, you can just simply go into a 3D scene. Number 2, you could just open up a new drawing. Or number 3, you can actually go into what's called our CASA product, which is an AutoCAD type clone. In addition to that, in addition to these 3 choices, of course, you have some resources over here on this side. These resources where you can contact support, check for updates, that kind of things. And if you want to go directly into the product, this area right here is where you would unclick this particular, okay, and so on. And then finally, this is the open dialog region here, where you can actually come in and just ask, what are the previous jobs that I've done? What are things? So let me erase that for a moment. So the next what we're actually going to do here is, if you look at these are different files that we may wish to open, but because today is simply on the scene, we're going to just go into the basic IronCAD scene so that you can see exactly how we can set this up, alter it to suit.
All right, well now,
let me just see if I can mute some of the people online. I'm just gonna see if I can. There you go. Sorry about that. If you would like to ask a question, please use the chat box and I'll be happy to answer those questions. So let's examine what we have in front of us. And this is again, we're just setting up the scene. This is the first thing that we're going to see when we start. So on the right, and as you can see here on the right, and I'm going to use some drawing tools so you can see it, and I'm focusing on this area. This is where we have our catalog system, and we'll have a whole section on drawing with this. Now, I'm going to focus on this right now because this is setting up the scene to work the way you might want it to work. And so, I'm going to actually come in and say, all right, these drawings can go away. Let's come back in here. What if I don't want this on the right-hand side? It's very simple for you to come in, drag this. So notice I picked in the top and I'm just dragging it into the center. And I can have this wherever I want. I can size it, but working the way I'd actually like to place this using the Windows architecture. So I'm going to come in here and say, I want to just come over place this down in the bottom. And now what it's done is it snapped this to the bottom. This is kind of a neat way to work. And the reason why I like it is because if you'll notice what's about to happen, I'm going to click on the little, and I'll be really very precise about what I explained to you today. Down here, if you look down in this corner, there's a little push pin. And so what I'm going to do with that little push pin, okay, so I'm going to come back and push that. And the reason for that is that turns on the auto hide. So at any point, I have a maximum area, as you can see now, for drawing. So if I were to come in here and say, all right, let's put in a little block. This is the drag and drop, and I'm going to zoom in on that. And maybe I want to change the size of this. Ooh, dear, 1.9. No, 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 no. I prefer to work in metric today. So this is on the fly. I can just move down here. I see my units are set to inch. So I'm going to just click on this, and on the fly, change it to millimeter, and then come back here and work on this little part. And I can say, okay, I want this part to be 25 millimeters by, touch this handle, 25 millimeters by 250 mil long. So good enough. And I've now created the very first part that we have in the scene. And notice what's really fun about what we're doing here is that this particular part has, in fact, some great features. One being that now I don't have the catalog in the way. I get a very large graphic screen. If I want the catalog back, I simply bring it back up like this, or I can lock it into place this way. The big advantage of having the catalog down at the bottom, if that's the way you like to work, is that I can come in and I could add different things directly from here, or I have the option of seeing all of the different textures, shapes. If I didn't want this to be, maybe this is a plywood part. So no, I've turned it into a plywood. So all of these are actually available to me. So at any point, if I want to bring in other features and see those other features, I have the ability just to bring it in from here. And so this is the drag and drop down at the bottom, and we're not working on the jumps, we're just setting up the scene. So that's the first change that I kind of like, and I like it to disappear. Now, what other things might I want to do? Let me just go ahead and shell this little part for fun as we go through. 3 millimeters and do that. So I've shelled it, and well, I want to look. You notice that I've got quite an expensive tri-ball, and what that does is it allows me to view it. But what if I want to have IronCAD? I want to find these different views, and I know that there are different views down here where I can say, look at the front, but they're, every time I have to go and find this, and this is important because I want to work quickly. And so what's really key is, I'm showing you down here, this is a tiny little button that I'm pushing. It's really small, and, I may be a little clumsy. I might not be able to find that tiny little button. So I want those available to me at any time. So what I'm going to do now is show you how we can actually do that. I'm going to come back in here and say, important. So next up, we want to do another little bit of customization because we want these menu items to be available to us full time. How do we do that? Come up here in this corner, top right corner, open space, right click, and say, oh, that's a toolbar. I want to set the toolbar. So here are all the different toolbars that are available to you. I want the camera picker. Go ahead and grab the camera picker. There it is. So it still exists down here, but this is a new one. And what I'm going to do, again, use the Windows architecture. Grab that and move it over there. Perfect. Now the advantage is anytime I want. Oh, let me look at the front. Top. So I've got all of these available to me, so at any time. And what's kind of neat too, sometimes I want to look at, oh, there's this isometric view. Let me see the other one from that side. Or let me look at it from the back. Let me look at. So you see very quickly, I'm customizing this so it can work really well. The other thing that that people ask a lot is they say, well, what if I want to see the dimensions on here? What if I just want to see it? Well, they're available as well. So I'm going to go grab the 3D dimensions, and I'm going to hold the right and push them all the way over here. So as you can see, what I've done is I'm still keeping this massive space for geometry, but now I've added some quick features that would enable me to say, okay, well, I want to put I want to know how long this thing is, and okay, there, good, thank you. And well, what's the width of this silly little thing? And this is direct, so I've got this. Move this guy out, please. So as you can see, I'm putting these in. What about you? Good. Oh, can I do that? Can I touch you? Delete that. Good. I don't want that one in my way right now. In fact, if I want to put in another one, do this again and get. Hey, where are you? There you are. 3D dimension. Please, let's do this line again. And I just wanted to get it so that it was in the right point, so that anytime I'm able to very quickly to find different dimensions. But the point is not about the dimensioning, but that they're all available to me here. What's the angle between this and okay, good. Got to make sure that's 90 degrees. Excellent. So everything that I'm working on, it very quickly gives me this ability to see there's all the different dimensions that I put on this different part. And of course, that's the other thing that's important is as I work, any of these dimensions, of course, will be automatically updated as I work along. So that's kind of a neat feature, all right, for very quickly. And that, of course they're up here, but if I'm in the assembly toolbar, I have to remember where the heck is that dimensioning stuff? And so having it right close to me is kind of a neat thing. Good enough. So there's a nice little piece of customization that we can work on. And remember that it's really, really important. Once you get your system set up exactly the way you like it, then what you might want to do is save. So, if I'm worried, the easiest way at this point is just to come in here and say, okay, I need this particular, come in here. No, I won't save I don't want to save that scene. Don't do it. So I've just exited out of IronCAD. I'm going back into IronCAD now, and you'll see that it has in fact kept the that slight customization that I've done. And this is it'll come up in a second. So here we come up. I'm loading IronCAD Mechanical as well. As I said, this is work that's courtesy of Joe Brower. So, I actually have a part loaded in here. So let's just go back to the scene because I want to show you what it's actually done for us. It's given us this, there we are. So everything that I've created has been saved. So again, this is down here. And if I want to put it back to normal, that's quite easy as well. I just pick, if I don't like where it is, you go back down, lock you into position. I can always come back, pick it up again, and just do this kind of thing where I say, no, I actually prefer it on this side. That's where I'm going to have it because that's the default, but it doesn't matter. These guys here, I can do this any way I want and have the system work the way I want. I want to be able to see just something, and I'm going to show everybody a little bit of a bigger part here because I want to, with respect to the scene and how the scene actually works, here we have a larger part. There's not a big assembly, but it's just a little assembly of something that came out of one of my factories. And another thing that is very important for people is this kind of idea that I've right-clicked in an open area because I want to set up what does the, can you all hear me? Oh, should be okay. I want to show you that what we're looking at is the background itself. And this is the background of what we're looking at. And I'll make a quick change here just so you can see it. So now you notice I changed the top. This does not affect your graphic performance much. Now, once you start to get into textures, that can affect your performance. And for example, you could come in and you could say, well, I want a particular, I want a particular background on what I'm looking at, and I could do something absolutely horrible like this blue grid and say go ahead, and now I've got a blue grid as a background. This is yet again another way that you can modify and set up your system. Now I'm going to go back to it. There's also 3D environments, and this is important where the actual image will be reflected. So if I were to create if I grab an image here, whatever that image may be. There's a glow, and grab that. This image is now going to be reflected in any reflective materials because I've actually added a 3D image. As you'll see, it's glowing from as I rotate around from different. So these are all things that are important for people when you set up your system. We'll go back to a very simple setup. Here's where you can slow your system down tremendously. And these are the scene properties for the background and how the scene works with the geometry in the scene. So for example, if I said, show me the ground and a simple shadow, we come back, there's the ground and a very simple shadow. And if you'll notice, it hasn't slowed things down very much, pretty easy. But once you get into some more advanced rendering things, like I'll say, take this simple shadow away, I want you to actually create a shadow map. So I want you to, using real-time shadows on the model so that it'll interact, and maybe some reflectivity, because some people like to work that way. So it's going to reflect as if it's on a surface here. But you'll notice now what's happening is it's interacting with the lights, so it's starting to create shadows that are cast upon themselves. And that's a very interesting way of working. Now, I do want to point out, this will substantially decrease your performance. So be very careful with shadow maps, especially if you're going into these high resolutions and you really want to do some interesting things. I'll add some more things so you can see it. And now what happens is you can start getting very exact shadows that in fact have blur. But trust me on this one, the more that you start to add, the larger that this would become. So if I take this particular part that I was just working on, and I just want to place this whole thing and put it perhaps, as part of this. And so now I've got this is becoming more, the assembly is becoming more and more, sorry about this. I want to drop it to the bottom. You were driving me crazy. This was on the top, but I want it to be on the bottom of this. Move all the way down there, lock it, and you get dropped. I want this to be dropped right to there. So I've got this sitting, but now this is going to, the load that's required to do this type of shadow mapping is going to be extremely heavy. And the more and more, I'm just pointing this out to folks. If you're doing photorealistic rendering, it's great. If you're not, this can slow you down substantially as you work. So my simple advice would be only use these if you're working with rendering. Other than that, simple shadows work just fine. So you can see where the base of something is, and you can understand how things work that way. So the other thing that we've talked about as we're doing this, I'm going to put a new scene in here. That will be my default based on that. The other thing that's important is what sizes are things. So if I grab a starter catalog and just bring this out, if you'll notice, I have no idea how big this is. And so another thing that you can do is, and this is a scene level, we want to know, so let's take a look at the scene now and say, what is it that I want to actually show? Okay. So doing this kind of work, what is it I want to actually show on this? And if you'll notice, there's a big, I can say, well, show me size box dimensions. And that's kind of an interesting thing that I'm going to show you now. So whenever I go into the IntelliShape, it's automatically, no matter what the IntelliShape is, on every part, this is a scene level thing. So any IntelliShape is automatically now showing me what sizes are. This can be very useful because as I bring in different parts, it shows me length, width, height. It doesn't really much matter. And it's a really powerful tool for being able to cut and work with the different geometry that we work with, as you see this way. And that will, if I exit now, no matter what scene I go into, no matter where I go, if I'm working on something that was built with let me just see if it was, oh, this one doesn't have it turned on. Let me just see. Nope, these weren't, this wasn't built. I'm trying to see, I'm drilling down to see, nope, this geometry didn't have that built in. But so you can see anytime these dimensions will show up. So that's kind of a nice change that I like. And once I'm done with that, I can say, all right, I've actually, this is the way I like my system to be set up. Don't need to save any changes to any of the work I've done. And the next time that I go into IronCAD, everything will be set up exactly the way that I like. Okay. And there are a lot of other options that you can get, but basically I don't make that many changes. So I kind of out of the box works very well for me. And before I go much further into this, because I don't want to get lost on what we're going to be doing in the next session, but I'm just going to show you that this has now changed. So if I come into geometry here and say, I want to create some 3D geometry, I want to go into a 3D scene as created by the original Trispectives. Anytime I work with geometry now and put this thing, oh, it didn't save it for me. Oh, let me do that. That's specific here. Show, I do want to see my smart dimensions. Not my smart dimensions, my size box dimensions. Okay. So now, again, that idea, there they are. And as everyone's seen before, any changes I make here, these are, of course, going to follow appropriately. So if that was the first in a series of lessons, this one is just setting up the scene, just learning how to use that. The next lessons are going to be teaching you how to work with the geometry. As I say, the very next lesson we're going to be working with drag and drop. Then we're going to be teaching you about sketching and then the direct edit in a very simplified format. There are a number of these webinars that are going to be available. I have recorded today's webinar. And quick introduction, this is the IronCAD team. There's more than 255,000 users worldwide. In fact, there's a lot more than that because we had a pretty good year so far. 20 plus years in CAD leadership and more than 165 international resellers. We are happy to prove it to you. Joe and myself stand ready to provide assistance to anyone who wants to learn how to make this happen. And at this point, I'm more than happy to open this up. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. And if not, it has been my pleasure to. I don't see any questions in the chat box, but if anyone would like to question me on what we've done so far. If not, it's been my pleasure to meet with y'all. Appreciate it and hope y'all have an absolutely fantastic day. Anything good on your end, Joe? You interested in seeing anything else? Nope. Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.